You weren't born expecting life to be easy, but somehow you grew up thinking it should be. That if you're kind, work hard, and play by the rules, life won't hurt. That good people are spared pain. That love will protect you from heartbreak. That success will protect you from shame. That discipline will protect you from chaos. But none of it really does. Because pain still finds its way in, even when you try your best. Even when you do everything right. Even when you control every detail. It still hurts. And that's not because you failed. It's because suffering is part of living. And somewhere deep down you already know this. You feel it when people disappoint you. You feel it when your plans fall apart. You feel it in the silence between you and someone you used to love. You feel it in the questions that keep you up at night. Why me? Why now? Why does it feel like nothing is ever enough? These questions don't mean you're broken. They mean you're awake, because to be awake is to be aware of pain. But we weren't taught how to sit with it. We were taught how to run from it, how to numb it, hide it, distract from it, perform around it. We were taught to smile when we're breaking, to hustle harder when we feel lost, to look good while falling apart. And that illusion becomes our prison. Because suffering doesn't stop just because we pretend. In fact, pretending makes it worse. It deepens the disconnection. It creates a double life. The life you show the world, and the one you keep in the dark. But Nietzsche didn't say, suffering is the end. He said it's the beginning. To live is to suffer, he said. To survive is to find meaning in the suffering. This isn't just philosophy. It's a survival strategy. Because if you don't find meaning, the pain swallows you. It makes you bitter, close, cynical. It makes you see life through a filter of fear. And you stop trying. You stop believing. You stop living. So you need to ask the harder question. Not, why am I suffering? But what is this pain asking me to become? That question can change your life. Because it turns you from victim to student. From helpless to aware. From broken to becoming. Let me tell you about Maya. She was 28 when her long-term relationship ended. It wasn't toxic. It wasn't dramatic. It just faded. Years of people-pleasing. Of avoiding conflict. Of prioritizing his needs. Until one day she couldn't recognize herself. When he left, she fell apart. She couldn't eat. She couldn't sleep. She couldn't stop asking, what did I do wrong? But months later in therapy she realized something. She had never really been in the relationship. Not fully. She had been a version of herself she thought he'd like. And the pain of losing him wasn't just about him. It was about losing the illusion. Losing the part of her that thought she had to be good to be loved. And that loss? It made room for truth. For self. For becoming. That's what suffering can do. It can strip you of what isn't real. So what's left can be. And that's why meaning matters. Not because it fixes the pain, but because it transforms it. From punishment into purpose. From breakdown into breakthrough. From crisis into clarity. So if you're in pain right now, don't rush past it. Don't numb it away. Don't bury it in performance. Sit with it. Listen to it. Ask it what it's trying to show you. Because hidden inside it is the next version of you. And maybe that version is finally free. Pain isn't just pain. It's fear. Fear of what it might mean. Fear that it might last forever. Fear that it's your fault. So we run. Not because we're weak, but because we're human. We're taught to chase comfort and escape anything that feels unsafe. So when pain knocks on the door, we pretend we're not home. We stay busy. We stay distracted. We stay numb. We label pain as a problem to solve, not a message to receive. We say things like, "I'm fine," even when we're falling apart. We laugh too loud, work too late, scroll for hours. We chase dopamine because we're terrified of sitting in silence, terrified of what the silence might say. But here's the paradox. The more you run from pain, the more it owns you. The more you avoid it, the bigger it becomes. What you resist persists, and eventually it bleeds into everything, into how you love, into how you speak, into how you see yourself. Unprocessed pain becomes your lens. You become reactive, guarded, hypervigilant. You start to see threat where there is none. You push away people who care. You chase people who don't. And it's not because you're broken. It's because you're scared. And fear, when left unchecked, becomes your identity. But Nietzsche didn't see suffering as something to run from. He saw it as the raw material of growth, the dark soil where your real self can take root. That doesn't mean you have to like the pain, but you have to learn from it. Because every time you avoid it, you miss the lesson. You stay in the same loop, same patterns, same arguments, same heartbreak, different faces, same wounds. You say, "Why does this keep happening to me?" Maybe it's because the pain hasn't been listened to yet. Let me tell you about Kai. He was 33, high performer, always on, the guy everyone admired. But behind the confidence was panic, deep exhaustion, sleepless nights, anxiety that never shut up. He'd been running his whole life, from childhood abandonment, from feeling unworthy, from the fear that if he ever slowed down, he'd disappear. He told his therapist, "I don't know who I am without the pressure." And that's when it hit him. His pain wasn't the enemy. It was the map, a signal pointing toward what needed healing. He didn't need more goals. He needed grief. He needed to feel what he had buried under 20 years of achievement. So he started facing it, crying, writing, screaming in his car. He felt like he was dying. But he wasn't. He was finally being reborn. Because pain, when met with honesty, becomes power. It becomes truth. It becomes clarity. But only if you stop resisting. Only if you stop pretending. Only if you start saying, "Yes, this hurts, and I'm still here." You don't need to be fearless. You just need to be present. The goal is not to eliminate pain. It's to feel safe enough to hold it. To let it move through you instead of controlling you. To breathe into it instead of bracing against it. To stop asking, "How do I fix this?" and start asking, "What is this trying to teach me?" Because pain has a voice. It speaks in the ache of loneliness, in the weight of burnout, in the emptiness after a toxic relationship ends. It says, "Something here needs your love." But love doesn't always mean comfort. Sometimes it means confrontation. It means looking at the parts of you that hurt and staying. Not abandoning yourself again. Not bypassing with positivity. But choosing to stay with the discomfort long enough to hear the truth. And the truth might be this: you've been running from the very thing that could set you free. And freedom doesn't come from control. It comes from surrender. From trusting that you are strong enough to feel this, and survive it, and grow from it. Because you are. You were never meant to avoid pain. You were meant to evolve through it. Just like fire doesn't destroy gold, it purifies it. Suffering doesn't destroy the soul, it reveals it. Pain doesn't go away just because you ignore it. It waits. It finds cracks in your silence. It speaks when the room gets quiet. It shows up in your body, in your stomach, in your chest, in your breath. It waits until you're too tired to run, until you're too numb to pretend. And that's when it hits. Not to break you, but to break you open, because what you call breaking down might actually be breaking through. The world tells you to escape pain, to fix it fast, to move on. But healing doesn't work like that. Healing is not a race. It's a reckoning. It's sitting in the discomfort until it turns into understanding. It's letting the tears fall without needing a reason. It's learning to breathe through the storm instead of begging for clear skies. Let me tell you about Anna. She was 26, fell in love too hard, gave too much, too fast. She ignored the red flags, told herself he just needs time. But he didn't want healing. He wanted control. Gaslighting became normal. Tears became daily. She said, "I don't even know who I am anymore." Because when pain piles up, we disconnect to survive. We lose our voice to keep peace. But peace without truth is just silence, and silence can be a prison. Anna hit her limit. One night he yelled again, and something in her cracked. Not from weakness, from remembering. She remembered her worth. She remembered her voice. And that moment was pain turning into power. She left, shaking, scared, but free. And the grief that followed was heavy, because freedom still hurts. But now, the pain had purpose. It was no longer about him. It was about her, her story, her truth, her boundaries. Because the first stage of reclaiming yourself is often unbearable. You feel empty. You question everything. You grieve the illusion, not just the person. You miss what never really existed. But pain in that space becomes your compass. It shows you what you truly value. It shows you what you'll never tolerate again. It makes you rebuild from the ground of your own truth, not from fear, not from desperation, but from clarity. And clarity is painful because it costs you comfort. It costs you delusion, but it gives you back yourself. You start to realize pain is not the enemy. Attachment to the wrong things is. Trying to stay where you're shrinking, that's suffering. Trying to please someone who drains you, that's suffering. Trying to outrun your emotions, that's suffering. But choosing yourself, even when it hurts, that's power. That's freedom. That's growth. Because every time you say, "I will no longer abandon myself," the pain shifts. It becomes wisdom. You see the lesson. You see the pattern. You stop blaming yourself and start holding yourself gently, firmly, honestly. That's what Nietzsche meant. To survive is to find meaning in the suffering, not meaning in the pain itself, but in what it asks of you. Pain asks, who are you when there's nothing to prove? What remains when it all falls apart? What do you choose when no one's watching? These are the questions that grow you, not the easy ones, not the quick ones, the ones that ache, that pull you inward, that make you sit with the version of you you spent years avoiding. And when you finally sit beside them, you see it. They were never the enemy. They were the child who didn't feel safe, the teen who wasn't heard, the adult who kept repeating old wounds. Not because you're broken, but because you were trying to survive. And now, you get to do more than survive. You get to feel. You get to choose. You get to create. Not from trauma, but from truth. And that shift, that's everything. You still feel pain, but it no longer controls you. It informs you. It deepens you. It opens your heart to others in pain, to yourself in the mirror, to life in all its mess. Because real strength isn't perfection. It's presence. It's honesty. It's saying, I'm not okay, and I'm still showing up. That's what pain teaches you. Not how to escape, but how to expand. And that expansion, that's where your power lives. Growth is not found in comfort. Growth is not found in pretending. Growth begins where denial ends. You don't evolve by avoiding. You evolve by engaging, by showing up for your pain, by walking straight into what you fear. Most people want the change, but not the process. They want the freedom, without the cost. But the cost is the work, the sitting, the feeling, the brutal honesty. It doesn't happen overnight. It happens in tiny moments. When you stop running, when you stop blaming, when you say, "This hurts, so I need to look closer." Pain isn't a punishment. It's an invitation to wake up, to go inward, to stop abandoning yourself. But that's terrifying, because growth isn't glamorous. It's messy, it's lonely, it's crying on your bedroom floor at 2 a.m. because you finally let go. It's deleting the number, not texting back. It's not proving you were worthy. It's proving to yourself you're free. Let me tell you about Jordan. 29, creative, smart, but stuck. Always chasing the next high. Workaholic by day, numbing out by night. Parties, distractions, endless scrolling. He didn't know how to sit still, because stillness meant feeling, and feeling meant pain. But then one night, he had a panic attack, collapsed in the hallway, couldn't breathe, called a friend in tears. And for the first time he said, "I don't know who I am." That was the moment it began. Not a breakdown, a breakthrough. He stopped lying to himself. He started therapy, started writing again, stopped numbing, started feeling. And it hurt. It hurt like hell. But that pain was information. It showed him where he was bleeding, where he had abandoned himself, where he needed to rebuild. Growth isn't pretty. It's heavy. It's shedding identities. It's saying goodbye to who you were, to meet who you could become. It's grieving the fantasy, so you can face the truth. It's not about becoming someone else. It's about remembering who you are, and that remembering hurts, because it means facing what you forgot, what you pushed away, what you buried. But healing asks for wholeness, and wholeness includes pain. You can't skip parts. You can't fake it. You can't spiritual bypass it. You must feel it. You must move through it. That's the only way it loses power. Avoidance feeds fear. Participation transforms it, because when you touch your pain, you begin to touch your truth. You realize you're still here. You survived, and now you want more. Not just survival, but peace. But peace is earned, not through control, but through surrender, through facing the storm, through standing in the mirror and not looking away. That's what growth looks like. Not a perfect life, but a real one. Not constant happiness, but emotional honesty. Not validation, but self-trust. Growth means you're no longer blaming, no longer projecting, no longer escaping. You're owning it. You're holding it. And that's what changes everything. Because pain doesn't shrink you unless you hide from it. But when you turn toward it, you expand. You gain empathy. You gain depth. You gain clarity. Your wounds become your wisdom. Your scars become your strength. Not because pain is good, but because you are good, even with pain, even in pain, even through pain. That's the shift. From shame to truth. From fear to presence. From defense to intimacy. Because when you stop fighting your pain, you stop fighting yourself. And when you stop fighting yourself, you finally come home. That's what real growth is. A return, not to who you were, but to who you've always been, underneath the masks, behind the fear, beyond the noise, fully feeling, fully alive, fully here. And that is where your power lives. Freedom doesn't come from pretending. It comes from confronting. Freedom doesn't come from escape. It comes from courage. It comes from walking through what once paralyzed you. Not around it, not above it, through it. Most people think freedom means no fear. But real freedom means you're no longer ruled by it. You still feel it. But it doesn't control your choices. It doesn't shrink your life. It doesn't own your voice. Freedom is not the absence of discomfort. It's the presence of truth. The truth that you've denied. The truth that you've buried. The truth that once scared you. But you faced it. You named it. You sat with it. And it lost its grip. You no longer needed to run, or please, or perform. You finally came back to yourself. That's the real freedom. Not being liked, being real. Not being strong, being whole. Not being perfect, being honest. Let me tell you about Alicia. She spent 10 years in a relationship that looked perfect on the outside. Vacations, photos, anniversaries. But inside, she was invisible. Her needs didn't matter. Her voice didn't land. She constantly shape-shifted to keep the peace, to avoid abandonment. She told herself it was enough. That love was compromise. But really, she was disappearing. Until one night, he said, "I don't think I love you anymore." And something inside her broke. But not in the way you think. She didn't collapse. She awakened. Because finally the illusion shattered. And behind the illusion was the truth. She hadn't been loved. She'd been tolerated. And worse, she hadn't loved herself enough to walk away. That realization hurt deeply. But it also liberated her. She moved out, started over. And for the first time in her life, she chose herself, not out of anger, but out of clarity. That's the pain that leads to freedom. When you realize what you allowed, what you accepted, what you normalized, all because you were afraid to be alone. But the truth is, being alone isn't the worst thing. Living disconnected from yourself is. People think they fear rejection, but what they really fear is self-confrontation. Because once you see the truth, you can't unsee it. You can't pretend anymore. You can't fake your way back to smallness. Freedom starts the moment you stop pretending, the moment you stop betraying yourself to keep others comfortable. You lose some people. You lose old patterns. But you gain something priceless. Self-respect. A grounded sense of worth. And that can't be bought. It must be earned. Through fire. Through grief. Through radical honesty. There's no shortcut. Only through the shame. The heartbreak. The disappointment. Only through the mirror. Through the silence. Through the nights when you wonder if it's all worth it. It is, because on the other side of pain, there's you. The real you. The you that isn't performing. The you that isn't hustling for love. The you that isn't terrified of being seen, but is ready. Ready to live differently. Ready to choose peace over chaos. Boundaries over guilt. Self-trust over approval. That's what freedom is. It's not loud. It's not flashy. It's not found in the perfect career, or the perfect relationship, or the perfect body. It's quiet. It's subtle. It's the moment you say, no more. No more abandoning yourself. No more shrinking. No more needing to be saved. Because you already are. You saved yourself. The moment you faced your pain. The moment you stopped escaping. The moment you chose growth over comfort. That's when your life begins. Not when it's easy, but when it's real. That's when love becomes honest. When success becomes meaningful. When rest becomes safe. When your inner world no longer scares you, because you've walked through the storm. You've met the parts of you that you used to avoid, and now you're whole, still healing, still growing, but free. Not because the pain vanished, but because you no longer fear it. You let it teach you, and in doing so, you found what you were always looking for. Not permission, not perfection, but presence. That is your freedom, and no one can take it from you.